Commander Jake Harrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon and watched the alien ships approach through the vast darkness of space. The three vessels moved in perfect formation, and their hulls gleamed like polished silver under the distant light of the sun. Jake had dreamed of this moment since he was a child, but now that it was actually happening, he felt a strange mix of excitement and worry in his chest. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez adjusted her scanner readings from her position at the science station, and her dark eyes reflected the blue glow of the instruments. She had spent years studying theoretical alien biology, and now she would finally meet actual extraterrestrial life forms. Dr. Carl Bennett smoothed his diplomatic uniform and reviewed his notes one final time, because he knew that the next few hours could determine the future of humanity. The lead alien vessel sent a communication signal, and the universal translator device hummed to life with electronic sounds. A voice emerged from the speakers and spoke in perfect English with only a slight mechanical tone that betrayed its artificial nature. The voice identified itself as Ambassador Zethkar of the Velian Empire and requested permission to board the human vessel for formal first contact procedures. Jake gave his approval, and within an hour the alien delegation materialized in the main conference room using some kind of advanced transportation technology. The beings who appeared were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes that seemed to take in everything around them. Ambassador Zethkar wore elaborate robes covered in symbols that probably meant something important in their culture. The initial greetings went smoothly enough, and both sides exchanged basic information about their respective civilizations. The aliens explained that they represented something called the Galactic Federation, which included thousands of different species across the galaxy. They had come to welcome humanity into the galactic community and help them take their place among the civilized worlds. Dr. Bennett responded with careful diplomatic language and expressed humanity's gratitude for the contact. He explained that Earth was eager to learn from more advanced civilizations and hoped to contribute something valuable to galactic society. The aliens nodded approvingly and seemed pleased with this response, which matched what they had apparently heard from other newly contacted species. Then Ambassador Zethkar produced a data tablet and placed it on the conference table between them. He explained that this contained the standard pacification treaty that all new species must sign before joining the Federation. The document would formally place Earth under galactic law and require humanity to surrender all weapons of mass destruction for the greater good of galactic peace. The mood in the room shifted suddenly, and Jake felt the temperature seem to drop several degrees. Dr. Bennett picked up the data tablet and read through the terms with a neutral expression on his face. Amy Rodriguez stopped taking notes and looked up from her scientific observations with a frown. The silence stretched on for several uncomfortable minutes while the human delegation processed what they had just heard. Captain Lisa Parker of Earth's Defense Forces had been quietly observing from the back of the room, and now she stepped forward with a slight smile on her lips. She thanked the ambassador for his offer, but explained that humans had a long-standing policy of never negotiating from positions of weakness. The aliens looked confused by this response and exchanged glances with each other. Dr. Bennett set the data tablet back on the table and calmly explained that humanity had been preparing for the possibility of hostile first contact for many decades. They had developed extensive contingency plans and defensive strategies based on the assumption that not all alien civilizations would have peaceful intentions. The Federation representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats, and their large eyes seemed to grow even larger. Amy Rodriguez mentioned almost casually that human scientists had been working on weaponizing various aspects of their technology and culture for potential defensive purposes. She explained that everything from coffee to classical music had been studied for possible military applications in case Earth ever needed to defend itself against superior alien technology. The aliens looked at each other with expressions that might have been alarmed. Ambassador Zethkar attempted to reassure the humans that the Federation was entirely peaceful and only wanted to help humanity advance to a higher level of civilization. He emphasized that the pacification treaty was simply a standard procedure that prevented primitive species from accidentally starting galactic wars with their crude weapons and violent tendencies. Captain Parker responded that humanity appreciated the concern, but had already developed their own approaches to preventing accidental wars. She mentioned that Earth's military forces had spent considerable time studying the theoretical weaknesses of alien species and had developed detailed strategies for dealing with various types of potential threats. The Federation delegates began to look genuinely worried. Dr. Bennett offered to show their guests some examples of human engineering and scientific achievement as a goodwill gesture. He suggested they might enjoy seeing the welcome gift that Earth had prepared for their first alien visitors. The aliens agreed somewhat reluctantly, and the group moved to one of the ship's observation decks. Amy Rodriguez activated a holographic display that showed detailed schematics of various human technologies, including spacecraft propulsion systems and defensive platforms. What she presented as basic human engineering capabilities made the alien visitors go very quiet, and their skin seemed to become even paler than before. The display revealed that human technology was far more advanced and militarized than the Federation had expected. The demonstration continued with examples of human strategic thinking and problem-solving approaches that seemed to violate several accepted principles of galactic civilization. Captain Parker explained how humans routinely developed multiple backup plans for every situation and always assumed that their enemies would be smarter and better equipped than they were. Ambassador Zethkar made his excuses and announced that the Federation delegation needed to return to their ships immediately for urgent consultations with their superiors. The formal first contact meeting ended abruptly with promises to continue discussions at a later date that everyone in the room somehow knew would probably never come. As the alien ships departed from human space, Jake Harrison watched them disappear into the darkness and wondered what kind of report they would file with their Galactic Federation. Amy Rodriguez was already analyzing the data they had collected about alien technology and behavior patterns, while Dr. Bennett reviewed the diplomatic implications of what had just occurred. Captain Parker stood beside Jake at the observation window and mentioned that Earth's defense forces should probably start preparing for the possibility that humanity's first contact with galactic civilization might not lead to the peaceful cooperation that everyone had hoped for when they first detected the approaching alien vessels. 3 months had passed since the failed first contact meeting, and Galactic Intelligence Agent Quanto received his assignment with a sense of professional curiosity mixed with concern. His partner, Agent Morgan, reviewed the mission briefing while their ship approached the edge of the Sol system using advanced stealth technology that rendered them invisible to most detection methods. The assignment seemed routine enough at first glance because the Galactic Federation regularly conducted threat assessments on newly contacted species. However, the preliminary reports from Ambassador Zethkar had raised several red flags. That made this particular investigation much more important than usual. The Federation needed to understand exactly what kind of species they were dealing with before making any further diplomatic moves. Back on Earth, NASA Administrator Kevin Walsh sat in his office reviewing the latest intelligence reports about Federation activities in nearby star systems. His team had been monitoring alien communications and ship movements ever since the first contact meeting ended so abruptly. General Patricia Cole joined him for their daily briefing and brought disturbing news about increased Federation military presence in sectors adjacent to human space. Dr. Nathan Price worked late into the night in his xenopsychology laboratory. analyzing every second of recorded footage from the first contact meeting. He had spent years studying alien behavior patterns, and something about the Federation representatives deeply troubled him. Their reactions to human responses suggested a level of control and manipulation that went far beyond simple diplomatic protocol. Agent Quintal and his partner began their infiltration of human society by taking on the appearance of typical Earth residents using advanced holographic disguises. They established cover identities and started gathering information about human culture and capabilities through direct observation. What they discovered in their first week of investigation exceeded their worst fears about this strange species. Alien agents visited a small garage where mechanic Tony Garcia worked on civilian vehicles and overheard conversations that made their artificial blood run cold. Tony was casually discussing with his customers how to modify ordinary cars and trucks into combat-ready machines using readily available parts. He treated the conversion of civilian equipment into weapons as a normal hobby that any human might pursue in their spare time. Later that same day, the agents attended a local school where teacher Helen Murphy was giving a history lesson to her students about various wars throughout human civilization. She explained with enthusiasm how smaller human forces had repeatedly defeated larger and better equipped enemies through clever tactics and sheer determination. The children listened with bright eyes and asked detailed questions about military strategies and defensive techniques. Agent Mordon reported back to their ship that humans seemed to view warfare and conflict as educational entertainment rather than something to be avoided at all costs. The species appeared to study violence and combat with the same academic interest that most civilized beings devoted to art or philosophy. This fundamental difference in mindset made humans unpredictable and potentially very dangerous. The investigation took an even more disturbing turn when the agents discovered human survivalist communities scattered throughout the planet. They observed rancher Bill Adams leading workshops on emergency preparedness, where ordinary citizens learned skills that most galactic species would consider military training. Engineer Susan Clark demonstrated how to build defensive fortifications using common construction materials and household items. What truly alarmed the Federation agents was realizing that humans actively prepared for apocalyptic scenarios as a form of recreation. They found thousands of online communities where people like computer programmer Alex Turner and data analyst Nicole White shared detailed plans for surviving everything from natural disasters to alien invasions. These humans treated existential threats as intellectual puzzles to be solved rather than nightmares to be feared. The agents discovered that human entertainment media was filled with stories about fighting superior alien civilizations and winning through courage and ingenuity. Movies and books celebrated human characters who refused to surrender even when facing impossible odds against technologically advanced enemies. This cultural programming seemed to prepare the entire species for exactly the kind of conflict that the Federation hoped to avoid. Agent Quintal made an even more shocking discovery when he accessed human computer networks and found detailed discussions about the theoretical weaknesses of every alien species the Federation had ever encountered. Despite having only brief contact with galactic civilization, humans had already begun analyzing alien biology and technology with frightening efficiency and creativity. Programmer Alex Turner had somehow reverse-engineered several pieces of alien technology from the limited sensor data collected during the first contact meeting. Data analyst Nicole White had created detailed tactical assessments of Federation ship designs and identified multiple vulnerabilities that the original builders had never considered. The speed and accuracy of human analysis capabilities far exceeded anything in the Federation database. The alien agents reported their findings to Federation intelligence command with growing alarm in their communications. They explained that humans did not fit any known pattern of species development and seemed to possess an almost supernatural ability to turn any situation into a competitive advantage. The species appeared to be naturally paranoid and aggressive, in ways that made them extremely difficult to predict or control. Dr. Nathan Price continued his analysis of alien behavior and reached conclusions that worried Earth's leadership. He briefed President Rachel Morgan and her advisor Frank Lopez about his findings regarding Federation psychology and social structure. His research suggested that the Federation used a combination of economic dependency and cultural suppression to control member species rather than outright military conquest. Military strategist Colonel Jerry Knight worked with scientist Dr. Sharon Wells to develop countermeasures against potential Federation threats. They analyzed every aspect of the alien technology and tactics observed during first contact and created defensive strategies that took advantage of human unpredictability and adaptability. The Federation agents completed their initial assessment and prepared to report back to their superiors with recommendations about how to handle the human problem. However, they had underestimated human detection capabilities, and Earth's intelligence services had been tracking their activities since the moment they entered the solar system. Agent Mordun discovered that humans had been quietly observing their investigation and learning about Federation intelligence methods through careful counter-surveillance. The species that was supposed to be primitive and controllable had turned the tables and was now studying their would-be controllers with the same systematic thoroughness that made them so dangerous. Investigation phase ended with both sides knowing far more about each other than either had intended, and the stage was set for the next phase of contact between humanity and the Galactic Federation. The Galactic Federation Council met in emergency session after receiving the disturbing reports from their intelligence agents on Earth. Supreme Admiral Kedamore studied the data with growing frustration because nothing about this human species made sense according to established galactic civilization patterns. The Federation had successfully integrated thousands of worlds using their standard procedures, but Earth represented something entirely different and potentially dangerous. Admiral Kedamore decided that humanity needed a demonstration of Federation's power to convince them to accept their proper place in galactic society. He assembled a small peacekeeping fleet of 12 vessels and prepared to establish a monitoring station in the outer regions of the human solar system. The operation would serve as both a show of strength and a test of human resolve when faced with superior technology and numbers on Earth. President Rachel Morgan convened her Security Council after Federation ships were detected approaching the edge of human space. Her advisor Frank Lopez brought intelligence reports showing that the alien fleet was larger and more heavily armed than the vessels used for first contact. Military strategist Colonel Jerry Knight recommended immediate defensive preparations, while scientist Dr. Sharon Wells analyzed the technical capabilities of the approaching Federation forces. The human response surprised Admiral Kedamore because Earth's governments made no attempt to negotiate or surrender as expected. Instead, they issued a simple diplomatic message stating that any unauthorized military presence in human space would be considered an act of aggression. The Admiral dismissed this warning as typical primitive bluster from a species that had never faced real galactic military power. Orbital Platform Commander Ryan Mitchell received orders to activate all defensive systems throughout the solar system. His team included weapons specialist Laura Thompson and engineer Pete Johnson, who had spent years preparing for exactly this type of scenario. What the Federation fleet did not realize was that humans had been quietly militarizing space for decades. Under the cover of asteroid mining operations and scientific research stations, the Federation ships entered the outer solar system expecting to encounter primitive chemical rockets and basic satellite technology. Instead, they found themselves facing defensive installations that had been cleverly disguised as civilian infrastructure. Admiral Kedamore watched in confusion as his sensors detected weapon signatures coming from what appeared to be harmless mining platforms and communication relays. Human pilot Maria Gonzalez, launched from a hidden base inside what the Federation had identified as a routine research facility. Her fighter craft used propulsion systems that seemed to violate several known laws of physics while employing stealth technology that made Federation targeting systems struggle to maintain locks. Pilot Chris Anderson joined the engagement from another concealed position and demonstrated combat maneuvers that appeared to be physically impossible. The first exchange of weapons fire revealed that human defensive capabilities far exceeded Federation expectations. Lara Thompson coordinated the orbital defense network with precision that suggested years of planning and preparation. Her targeting solutions anticipated Federation ship movements in ways that made their supposedly superior technology seem clumsy and predictable by comparison. Admiral Cadamore found his fleet outmaneuvered by tactics that violated every principle of civilized space combat. The humans used psychological warfare techniques that left his crews questioning their own sensors and tactical displays. What appeared to be a simple defensive engagement turned into a nightmare of confusion and technological failure as human systems jammed Federation communications and sensor networks. Engineer Pete Johnson activated defensive platforms that had been hiding throughout the asteroid belt and revealed the true extent of human space militarization. The Federation fleet discovered that they had entered what was essentially a massive trap designed to neutralize technologically superior opponents through superior positioning and unconventional tactics. The human fighters employed combat strategies that seemed designed to cause maximum psychological impact rather than simple destruction. Maria Gonzalez and her squadron used hit-and-run attacks that appeared and disappeared faster than Federation tracking systems could follow. They targeted specific systems on Federation ships in ways that disabled rather than destroyed them, while broadcasting unsettling messages about human capabilities. Admiral Cadamore realized that his peacekeeping mission had become a fighting retreat when 3 of his ships suffered critical system failures from weapons that his sensors could barely detect. The human defensive network seemed to anticipate every Federation tactical response and counter it with methods that no civilized species would consider using in space combat. A psychological pressure on Federation crews intensified when they realized that the humans were deliberately avoiding killing them while demonstrating an ability to do so at any time. This showed a level of tactical control and strategic thinking that contradicted everything this Federation believed about primitive species and their supposed inability to conduct sophisticated military operations. Ryan Mitchell coordinated this defense from his command platform while maintaining communications with Earth leadership. President Morgan and Colonel Knight monitored the engagement with satisfaction because it was proceeding exactly according to their contingency plans. The Federation fleet was learning that human defensive preparations had been far more extensive than anyone outside Earth's military leadership had realized. The Federation retreat began when Admiral Cadamore acknowledged that his forces could not establish the monitoring station without suffering unacceptable casualties. His ships had been outfought by opponents who used tactics and technology that seemed to come from some alternate version of galactic civilization, where different rules applied to space combat and military strategy. Sharon Wells analyzed the battle data in real time and confirmed that Federation technology was indeed superior to human equipment in raw capability. However, the aliens had failed to account for human tactical flexibility and their willingness to use unconventional methods that more civilized species would consider unthinkable or inappropriate for military operations. The Federation fleet withdrew from human space after losing several ships to what appeared to be modified civilian satellites and mining equipment. Admiral Cadamore filed his report with growing alarm because nothing in Federation military doctrine had prepared his forces for an enemy that fought like cornered animals while demonstrating the strategic planning capabilities of master tacticians. Back on their homeworlds, Federation leadership reviewed the battle reports with shock and confusion. The encounter had revealed that humanity possessed not only advanced military technology, but also tactical thinking that seemed to operate according to completely different principles than those taught in Federation military academies and strategic institutes. The human victory in the first military engagement established Earth as a genuine threat to Federation dominance and changed the entire nature of the relationship between humanity and galactic civilization. What had begun as a routine integration process had become a serious military and political crisis that threatened the stability of the established galactic order. Supreme Chancellor Vexrin called an emergency meeting of the Federation High Command after Admiral Kedanar's humiliating defeat at the hands of the primitive humans. The massive council chamber on the Federation capital world had never seen such tension as representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss what they were calling the human problem. Intelligence reports covered every surface of the briefing tables, and the evidence painted a disturbing picture of a species that refused to follow any known patterns of galactic civilization. The Chancellor reviewed Agent Quintal as detailed observations about human society and culture with growing alarm. The reports described a species that seemed to prepare for war as naturally as other beings prepared for peaceful cooperation. Every aspect of human civilization, from their entertainment to their education systems, appeared designed to create individuals capable of fighting against superior opponents and winning through sheer determination and tactical creativity. Meanwhile, on Earth, investigative journalist Emma Davis worked late into the night in her small apartment reviewing classified documents that had mysteriously appeared in her secure email account. Her research partner, Steve Roberts, helped her analyze the massive data dump which contained internal Federation communications dating back several centuries. What they discovered about the true nature of galactic civilization made both of them feel sick to their stomachs. The documents revealed that the Galactic Federation was not the benevolent organization it claimed to be, but rather a sophisticated system of control that kept member species in a state of permanent dependency. Hacker duo Michelle Lee and Danny Murphy had somehow penetrated Federation security networks and obtained evidence of systematic cultural suppression and economic manipulation on thousands of worlds throughout the galaxy. Carol Singh worked with military historian Paul Anderson to analyze Federation tactics used on other newly contacted species throughout their history. The patterns were clear and disturbing because every single integration followed the same basic procedure. First came peaceful contact and offers of technological advancement, then economic treaties that created dependency, followed by gradual loss of political autonomy, and finally complete cultural absorption into Federation society. The evidence showed that species who refused initial Federation offers faced economic blockades and military pressure until their governments collapsed and were replaced by Federation-approved leadership. Those who submitted willingly found their traditional cultures slowly eroded through subtle psychological manipulation and the introduction of Federation values that replaced local beliefs and customs over several generations. Emma Davis and Steve Roberts published their findings through secure networks that reached every major government and news organization on Earth simultaneously. The revelation that humanity had narrowly avoided becoming another Federation client state sent shockwaves through human society and confirmed what many military leaders had already suspected about alien intentions. Ambassador Beth Taylor prepared for what everyone knew would be the final diplomatic meeting between Earth and the Federation. Intelligence Officer Clark Williams monitored all communication channels while the unified Earth government coordinated its response to the latest Federation overture. The aliens had requested one last negotiation session and promised to offer humanity a much better deal than their standard Integration Package. The Federation delegation arrived at the neutral space station with what they believed was an irresistible offer of technological advancement and galactic citizenship. They had prepared speeches about the benefits of joining the galactic community and the terrible isolation that awaited species who chose to remain outside the established order of civilized worlds. Ambassador Taylor listened politely to the Federation presentation while her team recorded every word and gesture for later analysis. The aliens offered humanity access to faster-than-light travel, advanced medical technology, and scientific knowledge that would advance human civilization by thousands of years. All they asked in return was Earth's agreement to abide by Federation law and accept guidance from more experienced galactic civilizations. The negotiation took an unexpected turn when Taylor thanked the Federation representatives for their offer, and then calmly began reading from a prepared statement. She started with a detailed list of every Federation war crime and cover-up from the past 1,000 years, while diplomatic aide John Phillips provided supporting documentation that the aliens recognized as authentic classified material. The Federation delegates sat in stunned silence as the humans presented evidence of systematic genocide, cultural destruction, and economic exploitation on hundreds of worlds. Statistician Grace Allen used precise mathematical models to demonstrate exactly what Federation integration would mean for human culture and independence, based on historical patterns from other conquered species. Taylor explained that humanity had spent the months since first contact conducting their own investigation of Federation activities throughout the galaxy. They had made contact with several non-Federation species and learned about the true nature of galactic politics from civilizations that had managed to remain independent despite Federation pressure. The humans revealed that they had been in secret communication with a coalition of free worlds that opposed Federation expansion and were working together to develop defensive strategies against galactic imperialism. Earth was not as isolated as the Federation had believed, and humanity had already begun forming alliances with other species who valued independence over security. Clark Williams presented technical analysis showing that Federation technology was not as advanced as they claimed, and that much of their military superiority came from psychological intimidation rather than actual technological advantage. Human scientists had identified multiple weaknesses in Federation systems and developed countermeasures that could be shared with other independent civilizations. The Federation representatives attempted to deny the accusations and insist that their organization was dedicated to peace and prosperity for all galactic species. However, their arguments fell apart when confronted with their own internal communications and classified strategic documents that the humans had somehow obtained through methods that remained unclear. Ambassador Taylor concluded the meeting by formally rejecting the Federation offer and announcing that Earth would remain an independent world. She warned that any future attempts at economic pressure or military intimidation would be met with active resistance, and that humanity was prepared to defend not only themselves, but also other species threatened by Federation expansion. The aliens left the space station in defeat and confusion because nothing in their experience had prepared them for dealing with a species that not only refused their authority, but actively challenged the entire foundation of galactic civilization. The Federation now faced the terrifying prospect of other worlds, following humanity's example and declaring independence from the established order. Back on Earth, President Morgan addressed the world's population and explained that humanity had chosen the difficult path of independence over the easy path of submission. The revelation of Federation crimes had united Earth's governments in ways that decades of diplomacy had failed to achieve, and humanity began preparing for the challenges that lay ahead. Federation Analyst Prime, Kalfara, sat alone in her darkened office on the capital world, staring at mountains of data about the human species that defied every principle of galactic civilization. The reports from failed negotiations, military defeats, and intelligence operations painted a picture of a species so fundamentally different from anything in Federation experience that she struggled to find appropriate classification terms. The standard database. The evidence was overwhelming and terrifying in its implications because humanity represented something that the Federation had never encountered in thousands of years of galactic expansion. Every other species had eventually submitted to Federation authority through either peaceful integration or military conquest, but humans seemed to grow stronger and more dangerous with each attempt to control them. President Morgan stood before the assembled leaders of Earth's nations in the Great Hall of the United Nations building and addressed the world about humanity's new status in galactic politics. The revelation of Federation crimes had united the planet in ways that no previous crisis had managed to achieve, and the species that had once fought among themselves now stood together against external threats. Defense Secretary Roy Campbell briefed the global leadership about the military preparations that would be necessary to defend Earth's independence from future Federation pressure. Science advisor Dr. Sandra King explained how human technology could be rapidly advanced using captured alien equipment and the technical knowledge gained from their brief contact with galactic civilization, rather than being discouraged by their isolation from the established galactic community. Humans seemed energized by the challenge of remaining independent. The prospect of standing alone against a hostile galaxy brought out the same stubborn determination that had driven human exploration and expansion throughout their history on Earth. Shipping magnate Ted Foster announced massive investments in space-based manufacturing facilities that would allow humanity to build the fleet necessary to defend their solar system. Industrialist Victoria Russell coordinated with governments worldwide to convert civilian production capacity to military purposes, using techniques that humans had perfected during their previous global conflicts. Captain Ben Scott received command of the first human exploration vessel designed specifically for long-range missions beyond Federation space. Navigator Holly Chun worked with him to plan routes toward unexplored regions of the galaxy where they might find other independent species willing to form alliances against Federation expansion and cultural imperialism. The Federation High Command realized that their traditional methods of dealing with resistant species would not work against humanity because humans did not respond to pressure in predictable ways. Every attempt to intimidate or control them had only made them more determined to resist and more creative in developing countermeasures against Federation technology and tactics. Supreme Chancellor Vex Wren authorized the final classification of humanity in the official galactic records with a sense of dread about what this decision might mean for the future stability of Federation space. The entry would serve as a warning to all Federation citizens and military forces about the dangers of unauthorized contact with this unprecedented species. The official record update was transmitted across Federation communication networks to every world and ship in their territory. The message was brief, but its implications sent shockwaves through galactic civilization, because never before had an entire species been classified as an extreme threat to be avoided at all costs by Federation citizens and military forces. Kelthara included detailed appendices explaining the reasoning behind the classification and warning future analysts about the unique dangers posed by human psychology and tactical thinking. The reports emphasized that humans did not follow standard patterns of species development and seemed immune to the normal methods of psychological manipulation and cultural control. The classification entry read simply that species human from Sol 3 represented an extreme threat to galactic stability, and that any contact with human space should be avoided at all costs. The recommendation stated that unauthorized contact with humans would be considered an act of treason against Federation security and punishable under military law. However, the most disturbing part of the record update came in the form of a hidden message that Federation cryptographers had discovered embedded in Earth's final diplomatic communication. The message had been encoded using methods that Federation technology could barely detect, and its contents made even experienced intelligence officers question their assumptions about human capabilities. The hidden message was simple but terrifying in its implications because it demonstrated that humans had somehow obtained detailed information about Federation homeworlds and military installations throughout the galaxy. The message read simply that humans knew where the Federation lived, and that they would see them soon, in a tone that suggested confidence rather than desperation. The message was signed by an organization called the Human Exploration Initiative, and bore the name of Admiral Kate Wilson, whose very existence had been unknown to Federation intelligence until that moment. The fact that humans had developed space exploration capabilities advanced enough to threaten Federation worlds suggested that Earth's military preparations were far more extensive than anyone had realized. Federation analysts spent weeks trying to understand how humans had obtained such detailed intelligence about galactic civilization, and concluded that the species possessed information-gathering capabilities that exceeded anything in their own arsenal. The implications were staggering, because it meant that humans had been studying Federation weaknesses while pretending to be primitive and isolated. The discovery that humanity was actively planning expansion beyond their solar system ahead of their original schedule terrified Federation leadership, because it suggested that their attempts to contain the human threat had actually accelerated the very outcome they had hoped to prevent. By trying to force human submission, they had given the species both motivation and justification for aggressive expansion into galactic space. Admiral Kate Wilson transmitted her first official communication to Federation space from somewhere beyond the edge of known civilization, and announced that human exploration fleets were already operating in regions that the Federation considered safely under their control. Her message indicated that humanity was not content to remain isolated in their home system and intended to establish a presence throughout the galaxy. The final entry in the galactic records included a chilling assessment that humanity represented a new type of threat that could potentially destabilize the entire foundation of galactic civilization. The species that had been expected to submit to Federation authority, like thousands of others before them, had instead become the first genuine challenge to Federation dominance in their recorded history. Federation Analyst Prime Kel Thara completed her report with the recommendation that all Federation forces should be prepared for the possibility that humanity would continue to expand, and that their influence might inspire other species to declare independence from Federation control. The human problem had become a galactic crisis that threatened everything the Federation had built over thousands of years of careful expansion and control.